meeting has been facilitated by our very good friend Aparajita Sinha, who is the spirit behind another interesting organization called Moving Images, and it's been a privilege to be associated with Aparajita. She is the one who led us to the fact that Rachna Gandhi was in town today, and that she facilitated this meeting with thanks Aparajita for that. May I now have Aparajita come and introduce the speaker to us for today.
Good evening, ladies, can you hear me? Friends, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me now? Good evening, friends. If those of you got an email about today's evening program, would have seen Manthan and Moving Images. So I represent Moving Images here. Just as Manthan introduces people who talk about serious subjects, so that we can think about them. As you all know, cinema has now become a tool to understanding issues, people, and our own problems. And when Rachna was coming to Hyderabad, she mentioned to me that she would like to spend an evening with Moving Images, which we screen films throughout the year on a monthly basis. And Rachna asked me if we could show Devdas, which is a film which I suppose most of you have seen, and talk about it from her point of view, from the psychology point of view. Now, I hope that one day we will be able to do that, but today the time is not enough for that. And we decided instead to have Rachna talk about Bollywood. Popular cinema has become something which all of us, even if we don't watch it on a regular basis, we are kindled by, we want to know. The stars are like icons for many people. And Moving Images, though we are a film society which is generally supposed to show serious films, we also show a lot of popular cinema, more to study, rather than be entertained as education. And that's, I think, what Rachna's talk is going to be about. It gives me great pleasure to have Rachna here. She's a very old friend. I've been in the family for almost, I think, 40 years. And I got to know Rachna much more when she moved to India. Several years ago. Rachna, how many? 26? And she came here in 1984 from Switzerland with her husband Bernard Maski, who's amongst us. Rachna is a transpersonal psychologist, and she's going to explain more about that. She's been here before. Rachna has been here twice actually. Once as a representative of the Swiss government when she was organizing a seminar on Jungian psychology, which is her subject. And she has done Jungian studies in Switzerland before moving to India. And once again, she came in January 2001 at my invitation to speak at Kakatiya, where there was a soft launch of a book that she has written, published, called The Psychology of Love. The Psychology of Love explores love, using myths as tools to understand this wonderful emotion. For instance, it uses Shiva Parvati and the Radha Krishna myths along with Greek myths with Christianity's old myth, as illustrations of the many twists, turns, and problems of the man-woman relationship. She has been influenced by Carl Jung, as I already mentioned, whose study, she says, gave her a beautiful monocle to view her subject through, and Zimmer, who revealed to her the secret language of the mind. The interpretation of dreams forms an important element of her analysis work. The most challenging aspect of Rachna's work is how to combine the confidence of Western system of psychology with her Indian spirituality. How did this association of transpersonal psychology and Indian spirituality, etc. come about? Rachna was already into Jungian psychology when in 1979 she attended a transpersonal psychology conference in Bombay. Her teachers from the Jung Institute were there, along with the Dalai Lama and Swami Muktanand, whose work and whose teachings Rashna was already familiar with. Perceiving a Jungian connection, she decided to attend the seminar. She used to attend the Muktanand, she used to visit the Muktanand ashram at Ganesh Puri in Mumbai with her father Keku, who was also present there, another old friend. And she imbibed Muktanand's spiritual teachings in an almost subconscious manner. Over the years, her Jungian background made her realize that a therapist needs personal spiritual discipline to help others. The mental level must be restored. After the conference, Rashna came to the conclusion that transpersonal psychology needs spiritual assessment, and that the wisdom that was already within her and those who came from the Indian traditional matrix was what transpersonal psychology was all about, and what it uses as tools. She says that in transpersonal psychology, you don't study those who are dysfunctional, but those who are optimally functional. You look at someone who is self-actualized and apply the principles or insights pertaining to that to help those who are dysfunctional. According to her, Mahatma Gandhi is perfect by Indian standards as a person who is optimally functional. When confronted by pressing problems, Gandhi would go into prayer. This is exactly what we would recommend, to calm down and move beyond our lives towards the self. Gandhi did just that. He waited for higher wisdom. The use of myths as tools to heal relationships is comparatively a pioneering effort in India. Rashna first thought of writing a handbook to explain Indian terms like anima, animus, etc. Then she became interested in Indian myths and studied them and included those. She was fascinated by them because, for one thing, there is no moralizing in them, which seems to offer a greater personal freedom and choice. Jungian psychology uses myths to understand character and archetypes. In the West, this meant studying Greek myths. When in India, Rashna couldn't apply that because the symbolism was so different. Hence her foray into the extraordinary world of Indian myths. And how does all that connect to Bollywood? We have to have Rashna to tell us that.
Good evening, thank you. I must say that you must have done quite some research on the internet to find out all this. And of course, our long friendship, thank you. May I request everybody to put their phones on silent, please. We may ask ourselves, when I was asked to do this story, I didn't have much time because I was up in the hills. So actually, when Aparajita asked me to do this, I tried to combine the Devdas and the Bollywood story to try to make a presentation why we look as psychologists for the modern myths. So this is a sort of mixture of the two. We may ask ourselves what the current trends are of romantic love in India today. And in order to understand gender relations, we need to survey some of the strands of belief systems that have influenced the Indian psyche. Today, in India, in addition to the mythical tales of the past, we have the modern Bollywood myths, which are a combination of society's traditional indoctrinations, but with more contemporary trends woven into them. The heroes and the heroines of the myths of the past are replaced by the fictional characters of the cine world, which express through story form their struggles, their fears, their hopes, and ultimate individual fate and destiny, which is fought in the collective aspiration of a culture. One could therefore say that the modern day characters bring out the larger social reality that has its origins and beliefs and attitudes that span over generations. We can therefore assume that they are representations of cultural, historical, as well as social patterns that deal with the right kind of behavior within the context of the current norms of a fast-changing society in transition. showing how individuals are trapped in their cultural, psychological space which spans between the inner world of the individual psyche and the specific restrictions placed on them by a society. The different stories act as organizing agents that explain the way that natural instincts behave in a cultural context, and the resulting experience bring out the depths of emotions and record experiences that are archetypal and therefore recognizable. Reality can only be understood experientially, and the best way it is conveyed to the masses is through the cine world as we live today in an electronic media. Looking at some of the contemporary themes dealing with the man-woman love relationships, the question which I would like to discuss in this talk is whether the variations in the themes, though they may seem different, do not reflect the social milieu where there is a profound yearning for a more mature man-woman relationship that miss intimacy with a partner as a person, not just sexually, but also as a close confidant, but from whom he or she finds him or herself instead constantly distant. Why is this so? And what is it that is culturally dysfunctional that needs to be addressed? So the talk to be looking at just one such repeating theme through the story of Devdas, which needs to be recognized. Have we changed our cultural patterns since the first version and the seventh and latest version since the cine world in India began? Surely the costumes, the backdrops have changed, depicting the upbeat lifestyle of the rising middle class, but the psychic inner life story remains identical. Since disappointment is a predominant theme in relationships, we have to ask ourselves if it is not the film world where the romantic ideal can at least be idealized through the cine world. The denied and split off ideal of the unlived part within each one takes on the observer position in the dark halls of the cinema, and the individual enjoys with voyeuristic pleasure the fantasy dream world that the Indian films continue to weave in unending themes of romantic idealism. In fact, one could say that many of the film themes are set in some La La Land, which has little in common with reality. This would very much explain the split between the two worlds. On the one hand, the missing ideal in the relationship which is projected through the cine world, and the confined space that man and women find themselves in the reality and drudgery of their daily life. The themes range from the most primal longings to the most rationalized misinterpretations of reality of life. The Hindi film is perhaps the closest to a daydream. The psychologist Sudhir Thakkar says, and I quote him, Hindi films may be unreal in a rational sense, but they're certainly not untrue. They demonstrate a confident, sure-footed grasp of the topography of desire. The stories they tell may be trite and limited in number, with simple, recognizable meanings which on the surface reinforce rather than challenge cultural convention. Unquote. Films thus become collective primary material which the myths propagated in the past and which Bollywood now replace, and which both culturally and psychologically bring together a people of a whole subcontinent. The romantic lead male and female role idealized through the film world today is very much a representative of a metrosexual Indian couple who are caught in a fast modernizing society but who incorporate the transitional man's collective collective dream in a fast globalizing scenario representing the growing neurosis of a society, camouflaged by a flamboyant self-confidence, business savvy, glamorous, driving fast and flashy cars or motorbikes, living in posh mansions. They become the archetypal, bold and beautiful, upbeat role models of the new generation, but they remain internally shallow. The archetypal hero lover, where relationship issues with women are concerned, the themes still betray the old mother fixation, a social and cultural theme that repeats itself endlessly. They still find themselves trapped between their cultural norms and the fast-track traditional Indian man's dream of making it big, not just in India, but globally too. In addition, they also represent the collective dream of modernization, making it to the top without hard work. In India, nothing really changes, whether it is religious cults, political parties, mythological motives, or the idea of romance. They are rehashed versions which keep reappearing. Though the general appearance may seem to be set in fast, upwardly mobile scenario with the characters who are clad in global Western versions of the latest designer clothes, the music and dance set to raunchy, hip-thrusting movements that border on vulgarity, the variations in the themes still betray the repeating cultural constraints where the younger generation appear childlike and are daunted by parental caste and class hold fast, and who do not allow the youth to individuate and follow their individual destiny of their choice. Bollywood chooses the Indian youth as its core audience, which looks at life through the globalized Western idiom. We have to ask ourselves if these are the role models with their conflicting messages that we wish to send out to the younger generation, the emerging India of tomorrow. The film hero's romantic relationships betray his inability to have a mature relationship with the opposite gender. The male lover is constantly seen to web his net around women, resembling very much the Krishna Eve-teasing lover stance, whose initial contact with women verges on a sexual harassment. He is all over and around the heroine, who is initially annoyed and yet quite unaware of the impact that the hero's intrusiveness has on her. Awakened thus into her sexuality, she is thereafter reduced to a groveling being, where she reveals her stickiness to the hero. They are repeating themes of despair, separation, and disappointment in love. There is, though, a new genre of films that have just begun to break the old mold, like Kabhi Avidya Na Kaho, but that is a theme for another talk. So, what is the repeating theme? We have to ask ourselves. Jungian therapy looks for themes in order to discover what the most popular myths are that keep repeating themselves in a society. The most popular mythological theme we could say is still the Ramayana, a completely dysfunctional relationship pattern where relationships between the genders are concerned, which is unfortunately still idealized. In the cine world, the most repeating theme is Devdas, a film that has been refilmed, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Aparajita would be able to say, the 7th time in the film since the film industry started in India. An archetypal theme that betrays the split in personality between the dream world and reality. Now I'm going to talk about individuation and individualism. There's a big difference. Symbolically, the role of the hero and heroine is to undertake a journey to the inner world to face the dragons and demons of his own psyche. Therefore, to study the role of the hero or heroine has deep significance. It is the personal quest for individuation. Jungian therapy looks at the process of individuation where each individual must find his or her own inner truth. It becomes the goal for therapy to become truly oneself as an individual. In this talk, I will be looking at one such theme through the figure of Devdas, a figure that does not manage to individuate, and juxtapositioning him versus his lead partner Paro, who despite her underprivileged caste, gender, manages to come into her own. Through the analysis of both characters, I hope to be able to make it clear that the social and familial constraints that individuals faces for a psychologically healthy ego to develop. It is in no way meant to put a man in a lesser position than woman. Through the analysis, I hope to be able to throw some light on the deeper hidden aspects of why partnerships may run into problems which are not otherwise apparent. So now we start with Devdas. How many of you, by the way, have seen at least one version? Because I won't be going into the story.
Oh.
Has everybody seen some version of it?
Yes.
One of the 7 versions, so I don't need to go into the story because otherwise we won't have time. 2 or 3 versions, good. So then you will at least understand. The youthful boy Devdas represents the individuating ego, which is healthy to begin with and allows himself to get involved in adventure. He is, however, slowly repressed through the pressures of the collective conditioning. He is the example of a young boy whose feelings remain underdeveloped. A boyish attitude which develops at puberty from which he never recovers. What, we may ask ourselves, is the reason for this? It is a behavior pattern that develops especially with youngsters who have been repressed by the leftover so-called zamindari system, people who have today been replaced by the upper echelons of urban parents who have inherited the same values and who seem to know what is best for their children. The caste and class complex still dictate their collective behavior patterns, and they unconsciously pass down their likes and dislikes, most essentially in choosing the partner of their choice for their children. Paro, the heroine and lead role of Devdas' childhood sweetheart, was his first contact with the feminine element. His anima, what we call in Jungian psychology, represents the level of the soul and someone who could redeem him. Eros, or desire, is the spontaneous need for every youth to be recognized for who he or she is as a unique individual to be able to blossom. And it is only when one can get involved in the deeper layers of the personality where one is gripped and where psychic energy can transform through the interaction with the significant other. However, Devdas belongs to the so-called zamindari class, and his parents deny him what he desires most in his life, the love of his life, who is not the right class or caste. Young Devdas' ego is too weak to fight its way. So what is the result? Early repression inhibits the natural instincts to function in a normal, healthy way. It replicates a dysfunctional, unconscious dyad between the genders, which is so explicitly played out by the tragic modern-day myth of the cine world. Devdas is a typical male child that instead floats off into a fantasy world where no one can pursue him. The split secret life begins in the world of his daydreams. He's not quite sure what reality is anymore. He can see that Paro represents spontaneity and someone who's in touch with her feelings, but is not able to respond in a normal way. It is the beginning of being out of touch with immediacy. So now we talk about the incomplete Eros function psychologically and what it does. Devdas represents a typical Indian male caught in the eternal drama of what we call a parental complex from which he is never able to recover. With the spontaneity of the Eros function lost and unable to unfold normally, the secret longing for what one could call the dark sides of life is an instinctual curiosity which is healthy to seek the truth about life in order to find out for himself what works and what does not. It's thwarted at its very inception. He's a classic example of someone who does not know how to live his own emotional life. One of the negative effects of this outcome is that he's later unable to choose the right partner for himself. Instead, the spontaneous eros function, which is denied, takes on a destructive form, slowly sinking into the unconscious in the form of daydreaming and away from reality. He begins to look at life through a glass chamber, and there is no immediate friction with the reality of life. He suffers from a continual low mood, and behind it lies the power drive that cannot be carried out. Resignation is what constitutes the deep nucleus of the depression which follows. It will be difficult for Devdas to heal because unconsciously he will not allow any woman to come too close to him for fear of being wounded again. So how does this archetype function? Archetypes are repeating patterns that we can see which anybody in any part of the world when an instinct is repressed behave in the same way. It seems to give him a license to continue wounding others around him. His negative moods dominate his personality and he becomes victim to them. Such people convince themselves that they are not, no matter what, they justify their casual existence and do not live out their full potential. They have no more goals as they have lost sight of what their future should look like. He becomes a helpless prisoner of his unindividuated ego. When the positive eros function is frozen, qualities that initiate doing, achieving, such personalities constantly sit and wait for something to happen. What they lack is real masculinity and the power of endurance. They end up as shadow figures which are doomed to run up against society. The potential to reach a further level of consciousness can only come from self-reflection. However, the urge to change has to be stronger than the symptom, but they are unaware of what is happening to them. The normal recourse for such persons is to take to the bottle. It is a longing for an emotional experience of ecstasy, which is the only moment when they are able to contact their emotions. And under its influence, they often dramatize life, unable to look at normal functions realistically. One could say that Devdas lives on the lowest level of consciousness as he does not know how to get out of his initial wounding. When he's cut off from his feelings, there's a longing for spirit. Jung, the Swiss psychologist, explains, is a secret longing for the spiritual. The split-off personality is not connected to his consciousness. It's an unintegrated masculinity which is disturbed. He's not able to have a handle over his emotional life. Not being in touch with his feelings, he remains cynical and is in a constant state of restraint and is unwilling to change. Not being in touch with the positive eros function, he wounds the feminine figures around him. The umbilical cord to the mother figure for such individuals is never severed. Mother figure here implies to the parental indulgence of life that he has been brought up with. Such personalities are unable to run after women, but women are strangely attracted to such men and play the active role. His parents are not able to teach him the right social boundaries. He has never been taught to withstand conflict between what he wants to do and what is his duty. His tantrums are tolerated, which become his folly eventually. Women are often to blame for his wishy-washy upbringing of indulgence because they are the primary caregivers and where the male child in our society is constantly pampered. Never growing up to be a man, the other women in his life continue to mother him. The smallest whimper brings them running to help out, which does not serve him to ever grow up. Unable to concentrate and focus on work on a regular basis, the moment mundaneness sets into his daily work, laziness, the syndrome of lethargy kicks in, which becomes pathological with time. Having no goals, he does not know what he wants and struggles to get what he needs, hoping to be served instead. However, Devdas never goes beyond his cultural boundaries to discover his own truth. His silent anger at not being able to do what his own destiny requires him to do, which builds up as a defense mechanism. Part of the most emotional section of his life is excluded, and no amount of crisis can sweep away the neurotic fixation. Devdas represents the Indian male that has not individuated, not followed his individual destiny of his choice. He has a weak ego and is not able to take on the responsibility for making his own life decisions, and is constantly lamed when faced with paradox. He falls into a further death-like sleep, thrown deeper into the unconscious, and loses feelings of his individuality. Thus the whole play of fate disappears into oblivion. Now, contrarily, we're going to look at what healthy ego development looks like through the figure of Paro. So let us look at what healthy ego development looks like through the personality of Paro. She does not let destiny slip by her and is not affected by the fact that she was not accepted by the class and caste consciousness of a society and rejected as a possible partner, not eligible to marry Devdas. However, she is in touch with her own feelings and fights for her rights. Her active eros and inner flame throws a light on his sleeping soul. That is the active and invisible principle in Paro, who truly loves him with all her being. Something miraculous can happen through the alchemy of love, and Devdas's flame can be rekindled. He is momentarily aroused by Paro's impulses and her passion for life. He is touched by her audacity to take the active role of stealing out of her house by night to visit him, and her daringness to propose to a man, breaking all the norms of class, caste and cultural conditioning. But Devdas's resolution to act out of his heart falls apart at the moment the parental opposition comes. He falls into the collective conditioning, falling back into the parental complex. The mood grips him, he falls apart, and the same pattern continues. Paro's juxtapositions an individuating personality whose ego is in touch with her inner self, the level of her soul. Her life moves forward in spite of the fact that she too is not allowed in making her life's decisions. Although she is married off to a much older widower, having to cope with the tantrums of the existing children who see her new inclusion into the family as an intrusion, she is able to handle life as it comes, taking on the bull by the horns. She does not view her marriage with the rich landlord as a trap or a failure. She feels worthy enough to feel that she is wanted and needed for who she is. Her identity is well developed. She is in touch with her inner feelings and her self-worth. She is not fazed by her husband's elevated status or the fact that he is old enough to be her father. She handles each situation as it comes. She constantly supports others. Her eros function is alive and awake, and it's sparked off in others. She looks at life through new angles, consistently bringing creative solutions to every obstacle she faces. She embodies the manifestation of a healthy ego that is constantly in accordance with her inner self and touches and tries to awaken it in all the relationships she comes in contact with. So now we come to the conclusion. Devdas remains the tragic hero. Contrarily, he stays outside of life and he remains unadapted, ill and neurotic. by remaining a victim with his soul side, which is poisoned, contact on the human level is no longer possible. There are those numinous moments of possible realization, and if one misses them, it is all over. Not acting out what he most cherished in his life, Paro, he had to live out the consequences of his action for an entire life. एक छोटी सी गलती के लिए इतना दुख जिंदगी तक is the question he asked himself towards the end of his life. It represents the negative aspect of milling around and being caught in a negative complex. The same problem goes round and round in his head. The Greek myth of Ixion describes symbolically how he, Ixion, is bound to the outer rim of the wheel. It is the outer rim that he is bound to. Time moves on through the symbolic of the wheel of time which goes forward, the motion of energy. But the person tied to the rim of the wheel means he lives on the periphery of life and mills over the same problem, never coming to the center of the wheel of things. The center is also symbolic of the self, to liberate oneself from one's neurosis. But like Ixion, Devdas is bound to the outer rim of time without ever understanding the meaning of life. He is not able to understand that his suffering is a gift, to see that something is amiss, that something he must do in order to change the course of his destiny. Instead, he gets stuck and drifts into life's negative nature. He is unable to seek the truth and to find the true meaning of life, but as years go by, his behavior becomes pathological. Devdas represents the state of a tragic hero where his inner voice has not been loud enough to wake him out of his stupor. His consciousness is far too away from integrating what is happening inward, because most of the time it is kept in a semi-drugged state of drunken stupor. It clearly points out how the inner self never develops, because he never had the strength to go beyond the parental complex in order to individuate. When the ego development is not strengthened, it remains weak to endure inner life processes. The fate of his inner feminine reflects the state of the way he treats women in his life. They are the choices that lead to the tragic circumstances. He is separated but still connected, where he is united in some unrealized fantasy world where he dies a tragic death, wanting to unite and yet not being able to. He unites, but in the beyond, not in this world, but in one which remains a fantasy. Paro, his outer anima figure, who is his partner of his choice, tries over and over again to get through to him. When she gives up, enters the next tragic figure, Chandramukhi. Both act like mother figures that are drawn to such men to rescue them. They are like moths that are drawn towards the light to help redeem him, but to no avail. Paro tries again and yet Chandramukhi, but Devdas remains disconnected. Nature does not care. The solutions for energy to explode within him is its way it must end. When accumulated for so long, it is the inevitable outcome. The realization may come on his deathbed when his liver has packed up and he is seized with fever and it is too late. The realization that he has not been in unity with his innermost self and that he has wasted an entire lifetime does not come to him until the last hour of his life. Consciousness, if it did reach him at the last moment of death, will have to be enjoyed for an afterlife. His soul life had sunk into the world of Hades, the unconscious, for an entire life. He had the best chances of raising it up to the magical, alchemical process of relationships, first through Paro, which could have come to his aid to discover more of who he was through the play of opposites. But caught in the parental complex, he was cut off from the low and common people he was not allowed to associate with. He thus cuts himself off not only from his spontaneous reactions of being in the moment, but from eros function itself, which is the key to sexuality and the elan of life. Every individual who is caught in this tragic fate of the collective ideal of the society that still unconsciously projects these ideals can no doubt identify himself or herself with the cine world, with one or the other of the tragic fates that the individual characters play out. The question each one has to ask him or herself is whether the culture as a whole is caught up in the Ixian myth. Are we still bound to the outer rim of the wheel of time? Does time move on? And do we move forward in the same motion? Are we able to renew the dysfunctional energy and give it new forms of growth? Or are we tied to the rim of the wheel, and do we continue to live on the periphery of life, still milling over the same problems, never coming to the center of things? Or are we going to attempt to operate out of our center, each one for ourselves, to liberate ourselves from our socio-cultural neuroses? Is it not time that we renew the myths of the cine world to give the next generation a life that has equality, that is liberated from the caste, class and gender bind? Thank you.
I think there are some chairs here. Why don't you come and occupy them, please? Please, you could occupy these chairs as well. Please come. I never realized watching a movie had so much depth and meaning behind it. That was the most illuminating. Friends, you heard what she had to say. Now the floor is yours. You could grill her and try to get what all you want out of it. It's pretty powerful. Let you sit there. Unfortunately, there isn't a cordless mic around. Perhaps she might be able to answer you sitting there. Why don't you give it to her?
Yes, please.
And you explained about this story of Devdas, you spoke about the main character. So I want to know, in your perception, was it love or was it an attachment to the chemistry of all psychology, ego and human?
Say that again. Was it?
The character that you explained, the male character, Devdas, and the way you perceive it, the way you explained it, was Devdas's attitude, was it love or was it an attachment bound in the chemistry of psychology of ego and superego, out of which you could never come out?
Well, how is one to understand love if one doesn't get attached? If one is always detached from childhood onward, how do you understand the chemistry of love and how it can change? Then you never go in for an experience. So, it is a certain amount of attachment, and it is very important to have some kind of chemistry in order for us to know ourselves, who we are through the reflection of somebody else. But if you are not allowed to interact with that person because of the constraints of society, then somehow the young ego was not strong enough, and so he resigned to life, and then he took on an extra.
Because you have studied even about Radha Krishna kind of myth.
Yeah.
And what we have learned from all these kinds of things is that pure material attachment means bondage and love means freedom. So was it that he was in bondage or he was not in freedom?
But if you don't go into bondage, what can you know the difference between what really bondage is and what bondage is not? You see, then you will just take what we call the spiritual bypass. You say, I'm not attached, and then you don't know what really life is.
We stand submerged in an ocean of psychological terminology. We just want to know what is the aim and purpose of this presentation of a thesis on the story of Devdas.
Well, to show the positive side, which is Paro, what means positive behavior pattern, she had the same repressions, she had the same circumstances, and yet she was able to transform. And he had the identical problem, and he wasn't able to. What is the difference between the two? I think that's what we need to see.
Could you explain the Ixion concept which you spoke
The
about?
Ixion myth is tied to the rim of the wheel.
Yeah, what is the
And
background of
the-
that concept?
The wheel is talking about time, and time moves on. And if your Ixion is tied to the rim of the wheel, so time moves on and he is just on the periphery of life. He never comes to the center
How
of
do
the
you
wheel.
spell Ixion?
I-X-I-O-N.
Okay.
X-I-O-N. X-I-O-N.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Dr. Kaul wanted to.
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Two questions really. If Devdas has been made 7 times, quite successfully, I think, commercially, there must be something in our Indian audience which likes it. You know,
Connects to it.
So what does it say about ourselves?
That's what I ask at the end of the question. It's not time to break out of the mold.
The other question is, a conjecture, if Devdas had married Karo, would it have been a successful marriage?
Who knows what
No, I'm just...
Even if you take all the precautions of having a successful marriage, do you think you and I would know whether we are going to have a successful marriage?
From
It's
your
only
point
the
of view.
experience. No, each marriage is an experience which each one has to try out for themselves. There is no recipe, and each one has to go through it to find out what is a good or a bad marriage, because each one's true nature comes out really only through a marriage and not through the fantasy level of what we think is so-called love.
I think I should rephrase that. What kind of marriage would it have been? I wouldn't say a successful marriage or not. From your point of view as a psychologist, what kind of marriage would it have been?
I think any marriage is at the end of the Ixion cycle.
I would say
That really comes from experience.
if he had fought for himself and he had left his family, then he would have touched his level of his soul. Even if it was a bad marriage, his feelings would not have been frozen or restrained or gone into negativity, depression, drinking, etc. I would say he did what he did, even if it failed, because it came from the level of his soul, and he still failed. But it was his choice and his destiny, not the destiny that was so-called chosen for him by his parents. That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, I must congratulate you that you have done a very good job in demystifying Devdas. In the sense that Devdas actually was a very negative character, wallowing all the time in self-pity, drinking, needing attention, demanding attention. What he needed was probably 2 slaps on his face, putting him in a rehab center, de-addicting him and getting him back to the mainstream. That's what one would do today. But I think it's also a reflection of the times in which you are living. I think in that era, in 50s, 40s, that kind of a character really appealed to people. And people loved that character, eulogized him and, kind of made him larger than life.
But then why, I want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
why did Shah Rukh Khan and Aishwarya Rai have the same thing?
That's why I think the new Devdas is not such a big hit. Probably it has failed, and it is not. I'm not even sure whether Shah Rukh Khan dies in the end or not. Those who have seen the yeah. But it must have looked
The
extremely.
theme is identical.
Yeah.
Only the backdrop has changed.
Yeah, it must have looked very unnatural. I've not even seen it. Nobody, many of us
I
didn't
think,
even-
if I can
Yeah, please, yeah.
give you my views, I think today's world, it's not love anymore. There are other reasons. It could not be an interpersonal relationship, a disappointed fantasy, which causes people to go into that drink and everything. So it's not so romantic anymore to picturize it, you see. So they stick to Devdas, the concept of Devdas, and repeat it. Because there are lots of people who people are trying to slap and get into rehab, but it's not working. And it's definitely not because of disappointed love. It's because of some other kind of love, not interpersonal relationship. You see it every day around you, AA and everything. It's definitely not disappointment in love. It's mostly, I think, a sense of failure, or it's just addiction, plain basic addiction, a habit which has got out of control. But I don't see people taking to drink because of love
I think
anymore.
we're diverting here from actually Devdas' theme.
No,
and,
like I'm
and
saying-
alcohol, which
Yeah.
is another.
It's
is
not
another
a
theme
cause
in itself.
anymore. Because so they stick to the old theme because it's much nicer to have somebody becoming an alcoholic because of love and not because of, say, disappointment or failure in business or whatever. It's much more romantic to watch something like disappointment in love than a mundane everyday reason for taking to alcohol.
I just want to complete my comment very briefly. I think it would be unfair to Bollywood if we kind of label it as Devdas alone. That's not the only thing. That's just one of the colors which Bollywood has.
I said it's the
No, that's
only one
correct.
theme.
Yeah, I agree with you. But that's not the only thing. As a matter of fact, that thing was popular. That's why Dilip Kumar was called Tragedy King, and Meena Kumar was called Tragedy Queen, and that was very much appreciated. But in the same Bollywood, you had rebel stars like Shammi Kapoor and all who would not care two hoots. They would just go ahead and marry Paro. And so I think Bollywood reflects all shades and all colors.
Baburao.
Ma'am, just wanted to know, most love stories that we've learned from school, Romeo and Juliet, Heer Ranja, Umar Khayyam, Laila Majnu, in Telugu, Ekavira, all of them end up in tragedies. There's no successful love story that we've come across. If you know any, do let us know.
I think what we are doing there, if we are talking about those kind of love stories, love and passion is mixed up. They're two different things. Because if you look at all those stories, you have to have separation. You can't be, you have to have a
In fact,
love
Helen of
affair.
Troy, she
You're not
the whole
allowed, you
country
have
is
to have
condemned.
opposition. You cannot be a married couple in those circumstances. You have to have separation, you have to have opposition, you have to have drama in order for that kind of passion to thrive. And that's passion, that's not love. I don't...
His point probably is, why is it that these are the stories which have become so popular? The ones which are tragic, and why is it that love stories which
They lived happily ever after never happens in any love story. So, I mean, which only happens in fairy tales.
I think we are misinterpreting the word love with passion.
What's the difference in any case? I have not
Yeah,
understood.
could help if you clarify the difference for us.
No, seriously, I have not understood the difference.
What we call love is what we call romantic love, which is something that comes from Kamdev. It's our lower senses. We are just falling into passion. It's not love. It's our lower senses, which is attraction. And if that has to survive, you need to have separation, you need to have obstacles, you need to have opposition. Then passion will survive. So the stories have to have opposition in them. You have to have all kinds of obstructions in them for the passionate love. But if you're talking about everyday love, I mean, they say in a normal marriage, 3 years is the maximum the honeymoon lasts. And then you have the everyday, mundane stuff. So then you have to have an opposition come in and have a triangular relationship order for the obstacles to come, because the boringness starts. And that's not what love is about. Love is about, you only want fueling of that passion, So that's fuel, that's something that you need, you want. That's not love. It's my need. Love is something that you give. I think that's where you mix up passion and love.
Why is it only that the guys become devdas? Women are not committed.
Because women spoil them silly.
Is it something peculiar to India that there is a story like Devdas? I don't see any parallel to Western.
There is a lot of class divine, and there is also the whole thing that a man-woman relationship is so unequal, and so the mother puts too much emphasis of her emotional life in her son, and she carries but an umbilical cord tied emotionally to her son because she has no emotional relationship with her husband. And then the male child is given everything that a maternal love gives, and then he expects it of his wife. And she is a normal human being with her own expectations and her own inner life. She can't be his mother and sexually satisfied. And then comes conflict because she's a human being in her own right. And then he expects, the same treatment that he had from his mother, he continually gives. And then comes disappointment, and then comes conflict. And instead of us really solving those conflicts as mature human beings with a one-to-one relationship, we project it on the love affair and look for the ideal of, so to say, romantic love or passion, which has to have, again, obstacles, which has to have fueling of this feeling that I have to feel alive, this passion has to be fueled, and this is not the real thing. And so, of course, we start looking
My question was, how come in the Western films, we don't see the male hero drinking his way to cirrhosis, but in Indian films he does that. Why is that the reaction like that?
What I tried to show through the talk is that he's not allowed to individuate or come into his own and choose what he needs to choose by way of his love affairs. They're restricted, it's not the right caste, it's not. So the instinctual level, which is eros, or the emotional level, the lower level, that which wants to experiment with life, is not given a chance to develop in a normal way. So it goes into the pathos side, or I give up, and depression, and it's no use living, and that kind of pathetic side starts, and then the replacement of maybe alcohol makes it come alive again, and so on.
Who do you think did it better, Dilip Kumar or Shah Rukh Khan?
Taking off from what Vikram said, how would you distinguish between Bollywood and the psychology of love and Bollywood and psychology of love?
They're both dysfunctional.
Both are dysfunctional. But how would you describe Bollywood's treatment of love?
Well, there are certain stories which are mature, which are coming in. We talk about true relationships, one-to-one mature relationships. I don't think I've seen one yet. I'm afraid I'm not an Indian movie buff. My sister would have to talk about it. She would be able to say if those kind of mature films. I don't see so many. I see the important ones which I really need to see because my clients come and say, oh, now that I've seen Kabhi Avidya Na Kaho, I can now go ahead and have this love of my life. I have to go and see the damn film to understand what is going on,
How would you compare love as depicted in Bollywood to reality in India as you know it?
Completely a fantasy world.
Completely a fantasy world?
Ma'am, we still find people, youngsters doing suicide if they are not successful in their love. They think they are born to fall in love, and if they are not successful, they go for suicide. So it is happening in real life. So what can be the rescue for such kind of attitude?
But again, suicide is a fantasy wanting to be realized of what
he or she thinks is the fantasy of love, which is again passion, which means I need to be satisfied. Love is not satisfaction. Love is about giving. True love.
Mr. Bhatt.
Fall in love. You don't rise in love. That's what you do.
We call it into an archetype, which is actually correct.
Yeah, you wanted to ask a question.
No, he was recommending my case.
Oh, he was recommending. Yeah.
The scheme of Devadas, categorize Devadas as positive, and Bhagava as a negative.
On the contrary.
No, Devadas as having the attributes of negative, and Bhagava has attributes of negative. Suppose it was if she had also done Devadas and married someone else and gone over to me. How would you categorize it?
But the fact is, both were in identical situations, both were not allowed. And yet, they both came out of denial of that which they wanted. And yet she was able to individuate because she listened to her inner heart and did what she wanted to. He just went into the depressive stage of loss, what I was trying to explain. It's a frozen feeling function where you give up and say, the hell with that. Whereas she didn't. She never gave up.
Yes,
Never lost her identity.
One of the things which we didn't discuss, which I think is very interesting, is that one difference between Hollywood and Bollywood love is our film songs, particularly old film songs, which really heighten the tempo of the emotions and all, which doesn't happen in, I have not seen Sean Connery going into Mohammed Rafi songs. And those songs are very important. Today we remember Devdas because of its beautiful score.
Except in the musicals.
Have you done any research on the role of music in Bollywood now, at least pre-70s? Because I think that's how we remember those. We remember Raj Kapoor, Dilip Kumar by the songs, and that,
The Chosen story, which was written about 70 or 60, 70 years ago. I mean, of course, the fact is that it has been made several times, including 4 or 5 years ago. So it is a kind of perennial theme for cinema, let's say. And when you say Bollywood, Devdas is really not Bollywood. Because in those days, there was no Bollywood. It is a dynamic category. What do you say in one word about the relationships in Bollywood today? Would you be able to find this kind of complexity to be able to have a whole talk about the relationship, except for maybe the other now we should be mentioning?
And then there is that other one, I forget the name, where Vicky Gupta as a child, when she's living abroad. Consistently in a triangular relationship, and it ends at the point where the romantic love is supposed to end, where marriage starts. And if the movie ends then, I mean, they should have gone on to show what the film would be like 3 years into that marriage. It would be a completely different story. But they choose to leave it with the obstacles were consistently there, so the passion is fueled. It was about passionate love. Each one needed the other for each one to feel alive. I mean, it is completely out of reality. Set in huge, upbeat market, fast cars,
Yes, please.
I was just wondering why the story of Devdas was made into a film as many as 7 times. And I thought of 2 aspects. One was to show the chemistry of love or passion, and the other was parental control over their children about marriage. Now this control has resulted in many suicides, we've written that. And it has gone to the extreme of even one parent killing their own daughter because she wanted to marry somebody.
Not one, it's happening every day in the papers.
So do you think that this film would have had an effect on either of these things in real life?
Well, it only reinforces the dilemma. I don't feel it gives hope because each one identifies himself. Those who feel that they are disappointed like Devdas and are not able to marry the person of their choice, it reinforces their helplessness. It's not giving them hope. It keeps them in the Ixion myth of just going on. Therefore, I'm saying, isn't it time that we show our younger generation some better role models where we can get out of this task?
Somebody like George Bernard Shaw?
Could you give us an insight as to why Bollywood is stuck in a fantasy world?
Bollywood is only the representation of society.
Depicting love.
Mythology doesn't come up by fantasy. It's a psychic reality of a society and the constraints it has on psychic life of an individual, which has to survive in a society within those constraints. So myths are not some fantasy life as we call it. Myths are repeating patterns. Why do they repeat? Because of the constraints of a society that an individual has to cope with his inner life within that constraint.
So you feel love as an emotion doesn't find expression in social life, so they bring it out. Would you say that's true of the present day life and urban life in the cities?
I don't think that otherwise these films would find so much audience. Look at the cinema halls.
You've done some study on Indian mythology and
yeah.
Would you like to say something about that?
Yes, I think unlike...
She's written a book on that, and she's done extensive study on it.
Well, basically, human psychology looks at themes like, for instance, love through Western mythological themes of love. So you study different love myths. When I came to India, I realized I didn't know my mythology. And so when I looked at similar patterns in Indian mythology, I found the same stuckness of those behavior patterns, yet I did find transformation. You find that Radha and Krishna have the same longing and the thing, but in the end, there is a message of transformation. And the most spectacular myth of all is Shiva and Parvati, because it's about finding the union within marriage. It's one of the only myths that I know where they work through their crisis to be able to find their inner union within themselves. And when they find that union within themselves, they don't have to keep looking to the outer world for that excitation or that expectation outside, because they're at peace with themselves, they're at peace with their partners and the rest of the world. So they are beautiful myths that we have within our culture. So, I think that there's a lot of wisdom in our culture, and we need to look at those functional ones. In fact, the second book I'm writing is not about dysfunctional myths, but bringing out the very strong goddess psychology that we have within our culture. That we have fabulous characters who are not dominated like the Sitas. I think Ram and Sita is a terrible myth for India because there is no relationship. She's never together with Ram. She's either sent out of her marital home, then from Banvas she is sent off, she's taken away by Ravan, then when she comes back again she's sent. She has no marital life, and this is the ideal we call of male-female relationship in India. Give me a break. What are our role models? And these are role models. We have fabulous other role models which are far more powerful. And why are we using those? Why do we have these dysfunctional ones which we keep propagating year after year, village after village? Is this what we want?
should be saying in the lessons from your talk to the gentleman is, don't limit your choice.
Yes, Suvarna.
So I was just wondering, what's so wrong with fantasy? We come back into functional lives, everyday lives. Is it something, our movies that help us actually live good functional lives? We look for it, we come back home and we live normal lives.
Yeah, well, it is, I said, in the dark movie halls, you go into that fantasy world, you don't have that, that which you're really looking for.
Not because we don't have what we're looking for, not because we know it's fantasy.
Well, I think it's very mature if you can look at it that way.
Okay.
But back to the Indian mythology, whether you look at Ram and Sita, or Krishna, or the Pandavas, none of those are the role models one should look at. And these are the big heroes.
I think you're missing out some important chapters in the Ramayana about their period spent at Chitrakoot. It's really romantic love, 14 years in the forest, and they live out each other's love, and I think you've missed out a lot of important chapters in the Ramayana.
No, it may
Go
be
back
part
and
of the,
read it.
If you look at the myth as
it
a
may be
whole,
part of the story, it's not well known.
It is part of it. It's
But
a
it's not
large,
well known. That's not what
large
society
part of the
believes.
story. You're focusing on what the general public focuses, which is Sita's role, the submissive role. It's not so all through the Ramayana.
maybe not, but if
yes,
you look at it
I
as,
think,
as a relationship pattern,
yes,
certainly not.
it's very romantic love, a lot of poetry written about it. Chitrakoot is a very famous part of the Ramayana. It's not highlighted in daily life.
And even at a time when, a man could take about 20 wives or 100 wives.
He
doesn't
was
marry again.
that's right.
He doesn't read.
I don't know how you're saying it's not romantic.
Ma'am, do you think
Just a moment, let her finish that.
I'm not denying the 14 years of Vanvas either. I'm not denying the good part. It's not brought out, as you say.
Yeah, it's not highlighted
It's
at
never
all.
highlighted.
Yeah.
Number two, in a psychological sense, we always see in the beginning how many
Only
characters.
negative aspects.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
We always see how many characters there are in the beginning and how many characters at the end of the tale. And then you know between the male and female what denomination, whether it's a patriarchal myth or what it's trying to put through. Okay? So you have in the beginning the three of them. You have when they go out to Vanvas, you have Lakshman, you have Ram, and you have Sita. Then you have Ravana who comes in, which is another male. In the end, you have again when they come back and she's brought back and she's again sent off to the ashram, and then she's again, when she's brought back by Love and Kush and reinstated, and then she says, no thank you, I don't want to do another Agni Parisha. She disappears into earth, and how many are left? Only males. Love, Kush, Ram, Lakshman, and only males. There is no female. So it's very important to see, because the feminine principle, as I showed, is very important because she brings out certain aspects which males don't have. And in his entire period where he is, in politics, he has a golden figure instead of the real. And if a wife is not there to give advice to a male, which is the truest advice somebody can give, is the wife and nobody else, because she dares what nobody else dares, and all that is missing.
I wonder how many males in real life agree with you here. Very few of them, I think.
I want to just say one thing. Limited to Ramayana, up to the part where Ravana kills Chitrakhanda, that is written by one poet. The subsequent part which you are now referring to is written by another poet. And that style and it is totally different. It is obvious to any reader that the later part of Ramayana is not written by the same person. So to depict Sita's character in the earlier, what Rama felt for Sita, he trained a gang of monkeys to fight his wife. To say that this is how he felt after that, I think it's a clear interpolation of characters. I don't think you should judge Sita what happened in the later.
I agree with you, that is it. But I want to ask you, what is the young person in Varanasi have?
get out of here. You know, what do you think he knows which is the right version, which is being spread? Does he know it's an interpolation? What is the masses getting is the important thing that we as psychologists look at. What is the message that's going out to the masses? They don't know what is interpolated and what not. You and I may look at which version and what came and when.
And then ma'am, then the same interpretation hold good even for the Devatas.
Sorry?
The same interpretation hold good even for Devatas.
But what are you trying to say with that?
No, again, the kid, they were also, when the children look at this movie, they think the best recourse is to get into a sort of a devotion.
That's exactly what he said.
Ma'am, would your advice to the BJP be to go in for Kamaraja instead of Ramaraja?
You wanted to ask a question.
Relationship in our mythology.
You wanted to ask a question. And we'll close this after a couple of questions.
On the Hindu mythological and spiritual spectrum, which couple would you say is the right role?
Shiva Parvati. It's a profound myth because it's talking about the inner union. Actually, Shiva is time and Shakti is the energy within every one of us. And everyone has the male and the female, and it's about finding the Ardhanarishvara within us. Because each one of us has a feminine part too, which is the side of the soul. And time is Shiva, and it matures in time. And it's to find that inner union. And when you find the inner union, you are not,
You see the other aspects of the same story. The father-in-law, prospective father-in-law, kills from killing the daughter, so she doesn't marry.
killing who?
Parvati is a reincarnation of Shakti.
She's a transformation of Shakti.
Okay. And Shakti's father did not permit her to marry Shiva. Is that a very ideal picture?
But in spite of that, they do.
No, that's fine. I'm just saying overall picture. And that is not the kind of life that we can practically expect the youngsters to live. So that's why I have some who living in a role model which people can and should follow.
I certainly think it.
I don't know if we can end on this note. You know, this famous comedian Groucho Marx was once told that behind every man there is a woman. So Groucho added, and behind her is his wife.
Very well said. One last question from this young man.
As you talk of existence of objections and obstructions for fueling passion in lasting relationships, is there a necessity of those obstructions and objections for having a lasting relationship, or is there a constant pattern in all lasting relationships?
But no, I just made the difference between passion and love. I said passion means abstraction and separation and pain and pathos. For it to mean separation has to be there, otherwise passion is not there. And it's a need. I need the other in order to make me happy. And that is passion. So you're wanting, you want something from the other. And I said that that's not love. Love is about giving. It's a different thing. It's a different problem. You love your children, you love your mother, you love. You're giving. That's a different thing. So we mix up passion and love. I think that's the main thing that I was trying to do.
You also said that after 3 years, probably you would, all the problems would come up, which were not there in those 3 years. So, is it really necessary for all the relationships to have a definite period in which all these problems will come in?
Of course they do. You ask any married couple whether their honeymoon lasted more than 3 years.
3 years? 3 years. That's a fantasy.
And whether then the hard work starts. You know, we think that, marriage begins with the honeymoon, but it's actually then when the hard work starts.
No, it must be a constant commitment to all these lasting relationships.
Yes, Vikram, you want the last word?
I want to reflect what
It's a hell of a lot of hard work.
that our honeymoon with Bollywood is continuing.
Well, friends, we'll end this on this note. We have such meetings very frequently. We have had very, very engaging, very interesting meetings these last 15-16 months. And if you would like to keep coming to these meetings, you might just leave your name and mobile number.